Well, this is the best thing that's happened to me in quite a while. To be back and seeing all of you come, it's like a wonderful receiving line, as you all come in. Extremely nourishing and joyful. It seems like I've been away for so long, and so much has happened and continues to happen in that absence. So thank you for being here and for showing up and continuing the practice week after week, of course, with all the wonderful teachers who've been with you. Um, Thanks for holding down our shared seats together. As I'm looking at each square, it's like I want to sit down with every one of you and like catch up and call each of you by name. And uh, so we'll have to do it in the way we do in in Sangha practice, partly in silence, and then partly connecting. Because I have not really received all the things that movers would bring, I don't have a bell. Uh, so I'll have to use our voices as we continue. You can see I'm in a different environment, of course, here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in a back bedroom library office that we use. So let's sit together. That a wonderful, wonderful opportunity we have to sit together. And move into sitting in whatever way you'd like. Since I don't have a bell, find your way to rest in the present moment with some uprightness and attention and relaxation. Let the breath take you there on its own. without our usual external bell. Invite yourself back, following your breath as you did into your sitting, at your own heart, your heartbeat be your own bell. And let's remind each other of the heart of our practice as we begin by using our voices with the four practice principles here in the beginning rather than at the end. Let's do those now. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, it's compassion's way. It's really quite enough just to sit with you and look at your faces. And I feel so much more myself being with you than on my own. And it's been quite a while, and there have been so many wonderful teachings available to you. Um, I, I despaired a bit about what to speak about, or just and to invite us to reconnect. And I had a number of thoughts, but there's something that it wouldn't leave me alone. It's an old quotation that maybe some of you are quite familiar with. Uh, and it's from Thomas Merton, the Catholic priest and more general contemplative, really. Um, and I think that it wouldn't leave me alone because it echoes something both personal and universal that's moving right now. He said, and he uses the word prayer here. I'll change it too. He said, true prayer and love are learned in that hour when prayer becomes impossible and the heart has turned to stone. True prayer and love are learned in that hour when prayer becomes impossible and the heart's turned to stone. You could say just as easily, true practice and love are learned in that hour when practice seems impossible and the heart's turned to stone. Or another way it moved through me, the heart of practice is often revealed when everything is lost and hope seems like a distant and unreachable promise. The heart of practice it often reveals itself most clearly when everything is lost and hope seems like a distant and unreachable promise. And I hope this doesn't sound dark or heavy. I think it just seems clear in some ways. Because right now, um, the world we're in, is some of the either privately or publicly, for a lot of us, seems like one of those impossible hours in our lives. At least it seems that way to me. And I'm much more aware than ever of my own limitations as I struggle to just figure out what to do and how to respond. And I have to say, I have moments when I feel pretty inadequate to clearly convey the profound teachings which I love and trust, and which touch on this kind of difficulty and the kind of suffering that we're dealing with. But one of the things I want us to remember, at least I have to keep reminding myself really, is that my personal struggles aren't a barrier. Your personal struggles are not a barrier to freedom. Our struggles are the path. And this is what all the teachings and all the old teachers point to, of course. Um, but life, if you haven't noticed, life takes us to the edge often, quite beyond our personal limits and beyond this self that we've constructed that we rely on and mistake is the ground of our being. Life brings us to our knees, brings me to my knees, or worse. And at the very same time, it lifts me up in ways that I couldn't ever have imagined. I mean, quite literally, couldn't have imagined because the gifts are inconceivable. They're beyond what my small self could imagine because they're not self-created. And I don't want my heart to turn to stone. And I don't think it has. Um, Maybe a bit bruised and battered, and some days full of anguish. Someone asked me the other day, how are you feeling? With some hope that I would say, oh, this move has been great. We're happy to be here. I said, exhausted and disoriented. And switching metaphors for a moment, I can feel kind of like the light go dim at times and have a hard time finding my way in the dark. And you ever feel that way? And then that's when, as I said earlier, I can get bereft because I'm afraid maybe I don't have enough light to offer other people, to you. Um, and that's hard for me to accept, and a little bit hard to admit sometimes. And and people are coming to me, as I said weeks ago, um, they're turning to me for some light, some direction. And what I find is that most folks that are coming to me are confused, angry, and afraid. I'm confused. I'm angry. I'm afraid. And where I think we find ourselves in our culture now, maybe even in small pockets of our communities, I think what we meet are people most often pretty unskillfully trying to manage their confusion and anger and fear. We don't really meet them. We meet their managers trying to, as if this could be managed, all the protective strategies being used to an attempt to manage like the immense distress. And because it's hard, as you know, to meet each other with immediacy and honesty, with our raw and kind of battered hearts. Of course, naturally, we want to cope with whatever wholesome techniques that we've learned so that we won't feel so bad. And I hope we do, to meditate and do yoga and stress management and exercise regularly, reframe things somehow. But that only goes so far, of course. And then there's this automatic, habitual stuff that goes on in the background where we're erecting the armor we've learned from our families and our background to protect us against powerful feelings and the threats we feel in relationship. I'm sure you have your own favorite list. There's shutting down, blaming others, justifying or rationalizing our behavior, intellectualizing, lashing out, going numb, acting out, using substances, using each other. I'm sure you could add to the list. And sometimes we engage in religious or spiritual or philosophical dialogues like this sometimes, either internally or externally, to try to sort it all out in order to find some illusory solid ground, which is actually false and hollow. Anything to feel better. And it's perfectly natural. It's completely human. I want to feel better. And it's all part of the self-centered dream. What can I do to manage my experience and change it so I don't have to face life as it is? If we just practice well, then surely we're going to feel better, right? Everything's going to be okay. And it's not that we don't have those benefits, of course. I mentioned them as inconceivable, but Zazen, our fundamental practice that we just engaged in sitting, without any meditation techniques at all, just sitting, is the antidote to this endless cycle of being caught in the self-centered dream and holding the self-centered thoughts. Because know it or not, we're sitting in the midst of truth. Where else could you find yourself? We're not sitting in the midst of our problems and pain. Those are our perceptions. We're not sitting in the midst of that, waiting for the truth to appear on the screen, or relief to arrive, come in the door or the window or something. We're sitting in the midst of truth. And when we sit still and sit upright, as an expression of our willingness to meet life as it is, breath by breath, even when it doesn't match our self-centered wishes, and something else is possible. When we're unmoving, we're dignified in the midst of joy and sorrow, pain and sleepiness and confusion and boredom and all the things that happen, without indulging our desire for it to be different, then something actually is transformed. Of course, we want things to be different. Of course, we want things to be better. It's human. And even though we desire this, and it probably won't stop, our body and our attitude in sitting suggests something different when we sit in Zazen. Because we sit still rather than wiggling around out of the moment. And we sit upright rather than slipping into some other posture that expresses some other attitude. Our body mind in sitting in Zazen is that of a Buddha. And Buddhas only sit in the middle of human lives. That's the only place they sit, our lives, as us. We are Buddhas trying to be Buddhas and miss that we are Buddha. It's a wonderful example I used the other night in a talk, which I'd come upon. It was a reflection from contemporary Vipassana teacher, some of you may know, Rodney Smith. And he had spent some time, like some of the early Vipassana teachers did, in India and Southeast Asia and different places with some of the early teachers. And he encountered Nisargadatta Maharaj, who some of you are quite familiar with. And he was reflecting on this, and I found this really startling and resonant with what I'm attempting to communicate here. When I say in the midst of these difficult times and these impossible hours, if we sit still and upright in zazen, we're expressing and enacting a Buddha sitting in the middle of our life and every life, because that's what Buddhas do. That's where they sit. We're Buddhas trying to become Buddhas and missing out on the fact that you're a Buddha. So here's what he said. I'm just quoting his reflections here. He said, after a few years of strenuous retreating, I ordained as a Buddhist monk and went on a pilgrimage to Bombay in January of 1980 to visit the renowned sage Nisargadatta Maharaj. I'd known of him years earlier through the book, I Am That. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. After a few days of bantering back and forth about my attachment to being a monk, Nisargadatta said, "You're like a man holding a flashlight, trying to run beyond its beam. The view you're holding is undermining your intent. You're like a man holding a flashlight, trying to outrun the beam. The view you're holding is undermining your intent." And Rodney said, "You don't understand Buddhism." And Nisargadatta said very quickly, "And you don't understand the truth." And so Rodney goes on in the essay that I was reading, he said, "I was righteous, he was right." And the message stuck. As the days unfolded, I lost my arrogance and my identification with the Buddhist robes, leaving me naked and exposed by directly pointing to the truth. Nisargadatta destroyed my spiritual structure, purpose, and frame of reference. In their absence, something awoke with an upsurge of energy that seemed impossible to contain. It exploded with revelation of what the Buddha was pointing to. The path that Nisargadatta revealed was not a search, but a find, not a struggle, but an abiding, not a cultivation, but something intrinsic to all. He said, "I've been committed to the long, enduring mind of practice, but not their essence, not the inherent freedom that was immediately available." He said he thought he had too much methodology in his Buddhism and not enough release. But I think sometimes, like he was pushed by Nisargadatta, we have to be pushed in other ways. And one of the ways that I have felt that push is to feel like you're losing everything. Someday we will lose everything, for sure. So it's good to practice now. And that's why we call it the great matter. It's not easy to risk the uncertainty and vulnerability that comes in these, what I'm calling impossible hours from the Merton quote. And I want to add one more piece to this because well, you're reminding me, of course, that a lifetime of wholesome practice with trusted teachers and good spiritual friends, it makes it possible to continue in these impossible hours, when practice seems impossible. But one thing I want to emphasize is along with the confusion and fear and anger that I mentioned that's so common these days, both publicly and privately, there's another equally powerful energy that is flowing like an underneath spring. And as we admit that we can, and in fact will, lose everything that our small self is clinging to, we meet that spring, which is a deep and relentless grief. It's it's for me, I don't know about you, but it's easier to stay with the confusion and the fear and the anger. You get busy with that, working with it. They hold our attention and we try to resolve them, feel better. But dropping down into the grief, allowing ourselves to meet the unacknowledged weight of untouched sorrow is completely life-changing. And I think this kind of grief is harder to bring forward when we're faced with the kind of world we live in right now that can feel so unsafe and completely unwilling to demonstrate any care that we might be experiencing unending loss. And so it becomes this impossible hour, which practice can seem, maybe it's just me, but practice can seem empty or ridiculous or feeble or naive or foolish in the face of the world we find ourselves in. It's like, really? But also, I'm just going to riff on this for a second, but also, how many of you have found yourselves in some period of grief, real grief, and well-meaning people have come to you full of love and concern and said things that irritated you and disappointed you and pissed you off? Because telling someone what to do about their grief or how to navigate it, or that there's a gift in it, or that will someday pass, are all terrible ideas. This is what can turn your heart to stone. I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to respond to this big catastrophe or whatever personal ones you're experiencing, but being in it together and caring for each other and encouraging wholesome practice and allowing each person to move in their own way is a decent place to start. Even if one person's light is very dim in the dark night of practice, if you put several of those little dim flickers together, it starts to illuminate the way just a bit. But if we don't spend time together and our hearts slowly begin to close, and then we don't have the capacity to register the suffering of the world around us, and that's our vow. There's nothing to work out. James Hillman, pretty famous Jungian analyst, said one time, the issues are rarely about resolution. We aren't going to resolve our issues. The issue is about spaciousness. How much can I hold? How much can I allow it to touch me? And that question is met, I'll wrap up here. This another beautiful quote that I came upon from John O'Donohue, who's one of our favorites, a beautiful Irish mystic and teacher. In his book, Beauty, the Invisible Embrace, is where this comes from. He says, when we enter into this world of vulnerability, and this is what I'm talking about, walking, as Trungpa said, walking between hope and despair, straight in the face of uncertainty, which feels like vulnerability. This is that edge that life brings us to when everything seems dark. When we enter into this world of vulnerability, we stand at a precarious threshold. Anything could happen to us. And this is what I think we spend a lot of time not wanting to know. Anything could happen, but we're noticing it, right? When we enter into this world of vulnerability, we stand at a precarious threshold. Anything could happen to us. We are brought through such times by grace alone. It's the paradox of, excuse me, spiritual growth that through such bleak winter journeys, here we are in spring, we eventually come through a hidden door into the bright field of springtime that we could never have discovered otherwise. This is the heart of the mystical. It's not about building protectionist armor of prayer and religion. It is rather the courage of absolute divestment and the sheer vulnerability of nothingness. Everything becomes possible in a new way. Now, there's a lot in there. There's a whole inquiry just in that piece, I know. And it can sound a bit glib in the face of what's unfolding around us, I think, at this moment. I first read it and I thought, really? Where's the bright field of springtime in the midst of all this? I don't see it. And frankly, I don't expect it anymore. But to remain there is just the path of despair and nihilism and kind of a numbness to joy. It's life-killing, actually. And there are plenty of invitations around us right now to follow that kind of path, to give up. But I think the secret in what John O'Donohue is saying is contained in the phrase, in the sheer vulnerability of nothingness, everything becomes possible in a new way. If we do not set out to build what he calls, the protectionist armor of prayer and religion, and instead have the faith and the courage to move in the direction of what he calls absolute divestment, that's the losing everything, then we enter a different space. In that space, we're subject to grace. In that place, we have the potential to become a vessel for mercy for all existence. At least we might become just a little more kind. And I think this is the key. This is the letting go of losing everything. What kind of courage is required to face the vulnerability of nothingness? Every coping strategy, every curative fantasy, every wishful dream we place on top of practice eventually is going to be torn away. And we're going to have to find what it means to enter the vulnerability of nothingness. And one final thing, me, I kind of just pulled together some things that are, I was listening to a talk and somebody mentioned some lyrics that just seemed like a good place to end from Paul Simon's Graceland. Many of you know that album and also know that one song. Listen to these 3 lines. Losing love is like a window in your heart. Everybody sees you've been blown apart. Everybody sees the wind blow. Losing love is like a window in your heart. Everybody sees you've been blown apart. Everybody sees the wind blow. To me, they just convey this deep, raw vulnerability that comes with losing, especially losing love. From losing, period. Because we grieve what we've loved. And the image of this window in your heart suggests kind of like an openness, an exposure when we lose, and it leaves a gap that can't be easily hidden. And sharing what it is like to be shattered is, I think, the best antidote. Everybody sees you've been blown apart. Everybody sees the wind blow. how the heartbreak that we get immersed in is not just some little internal private pain, but I think something visible and something that's shared. The imagery of the wind blowing through the broken window points to the feeling of emptiness, of something missing, being unable to protect ourselves from the world. And reminds us also that grief is not private. It's something we share. We can sense it in each other, and we can help each other in the impossible hours. And that's what we do in inquiry. These are windows into our heart, so everybody can see. And so the wind can blow through that space, and we can be together in these impossible hours. So that's quite enough. I've taken a lot of time today, but it's good to be back with you. If there's something that's called forward in your practice or you want to ask about, please do, as we always do. Or we can also just sit together.
Flint, would it be okay if I come forward and say something while we're waiting for others to raise their hand?
Yeah, if you're coming forward, we're not waiting anymore. Someone's coming forward.
Okay. When we were sitting, I just kept having this image of it was freshly after things reopened. Things were sort of still reopening after the pandemic, and I was at the Hui, and you were walking towards me, and I dropped my avocados and I just ran to you.
I remember that.
And I am so glad I did. I'm so glad I didn't miss that chance
Mhm.
to hug you and to feel like I could see you in a body and our bodies could meet.
Mhm.
And I don't know why, but it just feels important it felt like that again today, seeing you again. Just to continue to say thank you.
Not miss the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, not miss the chance. Thank you. It's like Darcy.
So good to see you. Yeah. So Shayla got married a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
So this is Kevin's daughter,
mhm.
Shayla.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
As of course, it was a very joyous, wonderful occasion. Um,
I still think of her as a little girl, of course, but that's the way it goes.
yeah, yeah, she's 28. So it was joyous, and it was also one of the most difficult things either of us, have done. Um, Maybe not surprisingly, it was about a week later, one day last week, forget which day, but anyway, the day, we were texting each other and we had both just, the bottom had dropped out. And we were both in this deep grief, like what you were describing. Um, and it feels so scary to be there because you don't know if you're going to get stuck there, like wailing and keening, like, you know, like right after she died. And both of us were sort of independently writing the other first. That's what was going on. And yeah, it's a feeling of not knowing if you're going to be stuck there or you're going to go over the edge and you won't be able to retrieve yourself.
Well, and it's, if I can make a comment, it's not just the feeling, it's the thought. I have an idea that this is what's going to happen. But as we let go of every one of the thoughts and just move with the grief itself, that's the aliveness.
Yes.
Not any thought. I'll stay stuck. I won't stay stuck. I'll get better. I won't get better. Letting all the ideas go away. Just move with, because it's going to happen anyway.
And it's going to happen less impeded if you recognize that this is the way it is, rather than thinking it should be different or being afraid that it's gonna something's,
Yeah. Or
you
if I
know.
just do it this way, it'll finally be over. Like that could ever happen.
And there were things she was texting to me that she hadn't said before, like scary stuff that was scary to her. And it felt like almost joyous to me because she was putting something out there that she'd been trying to just hold. And
And grief was the vehicle for her finally to come to terms with something new possible.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's an important teaching.
So what I wanted to say also was, you mentioned that at the end, sharing what it is like to be shattered is the best antidote. And sharing it with each other was helpful. For me, then personally, I texted, I guess it was that same day, I texted Robin. We kind of do this grief talk thing together. And I tell you, as soon as I had put it into words, there was something that in my body just lifted.
Mhm.
It didn't even require a response.
Mhm.
And then I think it was the next day I videoed with Nellie, and I was a little further away from it, but just putting it out there and say, this is what's going on. That, like, even more was like, I'm not holding this alone anymore.
The wind's blowing. The broken window. The wind's blowing. Like in that line, the wind's blowing too.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. And I think it still feels at times like it's tapping into this grief, like that's everywhere,
The grief.
the grief, which on the one hand, it can feel like, oh, what a mess. But on the other hand, it's not just my grief, it's everyone's to be held together.
Just another form of love.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you.
I'm grateful for this place in which we can all, share. And thank you for all of your comments on it today that get it flowing.
Keep going. Suzanne?
So good to see you again and have everybody back home together. I'm really, really feeling joyful about that. I have been in my mind working with a phrase, a sentence from Pema Chodron's book, "When Things Fall Apart," which is always on my nightstand. But one line particularly that is very much in keeping with what you said today is, I wanted to share it. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us.
Yes. It's the same
Uh,
teaching, isn't it?
it is.
Beautifully done. I'll say it again.
It's only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over again to annihilation, which is a very strong word,
Ah,
and that which is indestructible be found in us.
we found this, yeah. And it's on a good day when we're talking to each other in this loving place. It's a nice sentiment. When it's happening, it's hell.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, here it is again. I don't want to get annihilated again.
That's right.
Yeah, no. She says, we think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved.
Right. That's right. The
They,
issues
they,
don't.
they come together and they fall apart, then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that.
Yeah.
The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen, room for grief, for relief, for misery, for joy.
Yeah. And that's the spaciousness that Hillman says. Not that anything gets resolved, it's the spaciousness.
Right, right. And we're so oriented to thinking we can resolve things. Oh, we can fix that.
Yeah.
But we're in this larger pattern of falling apart that we may not see the coming back together again, right? I mean, that's
Oh, no.
um, it is terrifying to go down into that annihilation, and the only way, as you say, is to share it and to not be alone in it and to know we're not alone in it. So, but the I guess the silver lining, if you want to call it that, is that which is indestructible is found in us as a result of that. And that's something that I know I have touched at times. I
Yeah.
felt that. I've gotten glimpses of that.
When every story has fallen away, what remains? And that's
Yeah.
what we practice over and over. Thanks
Yeah.
for that teaching once again. Wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you. So good to see you.
And another person in the mountains.
Hi, Flint. Hi, everyone.
Oh, so good to see you.
So good to be here. Thank you. Be seen. Oh, I felt like I was wandering through the forest and arrived at a deep water filled with a waterfall to be here.
Good. Good.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. At this stage of my life, and in several places where I learn and speak to my learning, I've arrived at a embracing of vulnerability, and sometimes I call it my superpower because of a willingness to witness and to share my own grief in front of others without shame, although that's my process. It's not really there. But it is today a little bit. I've been nervous to speak, but it's fascinating to me. Part of why I call it a superpower is my willingness, but also this experience for me of falling apart in grief and ungroundedness is a remarkable beauty. And I would even call it sweetness. I don't know if other people share that, but for me, it's part of my experience of turning towards and being willing to like drown, or die is incredibly beautiful and full of release and surrender and floating. And I think so often I just love this process of examining my fear of turning away from and dropping that. And what is there is actually not, I mean, it could be death. I don't mean to be dismissive or lighthearted about our human fear, but this is very true for me. So what I wanted to do was witness the sweetness of grief today. Thank you.
And I'll say, because not everyone knows, you're speaking from another mother who's lost a child. It's not just an idea.
No, my heart has been blown open, and Yes, it's not just an idea.
Yeah, I just
But
want-
it's not separate from the grief. I mean, I could cry right here and I will, I'm so happy to see you, by the way, and I send you love, love, love.
I feel you, like Jessica said, like I feel you running toward me.
Oh, I love the dropping the avocados. That was just great. Yeah, so to me, they're not separate, the love, the grief, they're just part of the whole.
Yeah, grief is, like I said, it's just another name for love.
Yes, and John O'Donohue, I saw you guys as being the field of whatever they were, the flowers. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Good. We've come to the end of our time, close to it. And what a rich time. How good it is to be back together again. And like, I mean, we've continued to be together, but I'm here with you. So to me, it's back. And I'll continue to be here when I can. I will say, but I kind of want to say this publicly, if it's okay. One of the, I say loss, it's a change. Over 20 years ago, I started doing this inquiry thing when I was back at the Austin Zen Center, and then came to Appamada, and I've been doing it in retreats as sort of my thing. It's what I love to do. It's kind of what people think of me, and more people come to this than probably almost any other thing we do. And because of the circumstances of my life right now, I can't continue to be in charge of it. It doesn't mean I won't keep teaching. But I've asked another one of our very able teachers, Joel, to manage it. And it used to be my thing, and people would fill in when I wasn't there. But now it's not my thing. It's what we do as a Sangha. And sometimes I'll teach and sometimes other people will teach. But to let it go in that way and to avow my own limitations is another kind of immense relief and grief that comes with it. So I just wanted to say that. So let's now remind ourselves of the way we cloak ourselves in practice by the verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Blessings to you all. And if you want to join each other to share some of these things on the porch, please do. Jessica will set that up for us. And I want to thank all of you who have and continue to support Appamada and all the different sanghas through your support. It means a lot to everyone. And there are ways to do that if you go to Appamada or any of the other websites for our sister sanghas. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think that's enough. I've kind of taken your thing, Jessica, and said it myself today as a way to offer thanks. So if you want to hang around, please do. It's wonderful to be with each other. And anything else you need to say, Jessica? Okay.
Just to add that if you'd like to have your contribution go directly towards a teacher like Flint or any of our teachers, please do indicate that when you make your contribution. Thank you all.